Good morning and welcome to Pot Up with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. It's a Monday, June 1st edition, and we got a good show lined up for you. We're going to be kicking the show off with Mike Morgan from the SEC Network, and then the second portion of the program, former Gator basketball player Kenyan Weeks will join the show. But let's go straight to the Titan MR hotline, and we're joined by ESPN SEC Network announcer, former Gator, Mike Morgan. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing well, Shane. It's good to talk to you. I guess the last time I saw you was in a radio studio when you were co-hosting and I was just a guest at old RUF a year or two ago. So it's good to see you again via Zoom.
Yeah, no doubt. Obviously, we'll talk about what's going on right now, but I want people to know, you grew up in South Florida.
Right.
You are a graduate of the University of Florida.
Correct.
Talk a little bit about your time being a Gator.
Well, I grew up in South Florida, and as you know, South Florida is a bunch of transplants. So, on any given street, it's of course you had all the bandwagon Miami fans that never actually walked on the campus, but they were Hurricane fans. You had a lot of Florida State fans. A lot of my friends from high school went to Florida State. You had a lot of Florida fans, but really it's not a great college area.
Mm-hmm.
Now my brother went to Auburn, and I started to have an appreciation for both Auburn and the SEC at that point as a kid. And I knew that I would have loved to have gone to an SEC school. And Florida had a great, still does, a great journalism and broadcasting school. And so I felt like that was just the place to go. And, I tell people every now and then I talk to classes when I do games around the SEC. The most valuable thing you can do while you're in college is get some experience. And Florida allowed me to do that. I worked at the campus radio and TV station. Back then we had the Cox Cable 8 high school football game of the week. So I was doing high school games on cable access. There might've been 12 people watching. It didn't matter. It was experience. And obviously the time I was there, so I saw you your last 2 years, and right away it was like, oh my goodness, to see that passing, that aerial attack in person. I tell people all the time, that changed the game of college football forever.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lavelle Edwards was doing some simulation of that at BYU, but quite frankly, BYU didn't have the cachet as an SEC team doing it. But what Spurrier implemented, and what guys like you and Werfel and Rex Grossman and Jesse Palmer, the list goes on and on and on, were able to do, and all the talented wideouts and guys like Eric Rett and Fred Taylor. It was just a glorious era in college football. So whether you loved Florida or you hated Florida, I think people look back at that now, because it's hard to think of things in the moment, right? You just know, like, okay, well, this is cool. But you look at it 20 years down the road, you're like, my goodness, we were really witnessing history.
Mm-hmm.
And we were witnessing a change in college football and in SEC football forever. Because so much of what was done then that was innovative is done now across the board. So I remember that from an X's and O's standpoint. And then, from a getting my career started standpoint, I just remember paying my dues, doing whatever I could. And that meant, I didn't have as much fun as your average student. And I wasn't tailgating and going to games. I was up in the press box, and there's no cheering. You're a true media member at that point. So I remember those days fondly. It helped me get to where I am today, and the memories of that time in college football, which you helped begin, those will last a lifetime.
Yeah, speaking of, the University of Florida, great journalism school along with, I think, Syracuse and maybe Northwestern. Do you guys like yourself, Dory, Jesse Palmer, Laura Rutledge, there's a handful of you guys that are all in the business. Do y'all talk a lot of smack among the other guys?
I really don't. I think I think it's different when you're a former player. Like you guys offered up the blood, sweat, and tears on the field. Like you actually earned it, and you have the ability to do it. And quite frankly, it cuts deeper with you guys. You've got the rings, you've got the championship trophies. as someone who just covered it in the media, I mean, we don't have all that. And I think nobody wants to hear an announcer be fanboy.
Mhm.
So I mean, some guys get away with that, like Peter Burns, who didn't go to LSU. He's a lifelong LSU fan. He's had some bragging rights the last, obviously, few months, and good for him. But I've never been one to do that. What I champion as a whole, especially now that so much of my career is entrenched in the SEC and the SEC network. I've been with the network since it launched. And when I do ESPN or ESPNU games, many of them are SEC games. That is always number one to me. I want to see, like, when I see those out of conference matchups in football, basketball, baseball, I'm pulling SEC hard. I make no
Mhm.
apologies for it. But when it's an intra-conference game between two SEC schools, honestly, as a play-by-play guy, I just want a good game. I just want a good game to call, and whoever wins, great. But we live a nomadic lifestyle, Shane. We go to one place, we do a game, the game's over, go back to the hotel, pack up, drive the rental car to the airport, and go to the next game. And so you don't have time to really be a fan anymore. It's all about being professional and making sure that you do as good a job as possible behind the mic.
Yeah, well, we're speaking with Mike Morgan from the SEC Network. Mike, when you look at your career, you do baseball, football, and basketball.
Hmm.
And you may do some other sports, but those are the three main that I
Sure.
know.
Yeah.
Is there one that you prefer more than the other?
I get asked that all the time, Shane, and I'm not hedging my the answer when I say this. I mean, I truly love all three. I think there's very few people that truly love all three. But long before I got in this business, I loved all three. I played all three growing up, and I was a fan of all three, almost to the point of nerddom. When a lot of kids were coming home and watching cartoons, I was watching NFL films and watching, 19 footage of 1950s film of Otto Graham leading the Browns to championships. I started up my own fantasy baseball league when I was 13. I played basketball probably the longest and still try to hoop it up in rec leagues here in Atlanta. But I love all three. Now, look, college football to me is as good as it gets. It absolutely is. So that's never going to be anything but number one. But because I don't get to broadcast, obviously the playoff, the national championship game, the SEC championship game, the games I do there's less on the line. So I find myself at times, even though football is number one, I could get more excited about my basketball or baseball schedule because it offers bigger games and bigger
Mhm.
moments. So it's a trade off of all. I know this much. I've had a chance to do Major League Baseball. I did NFL preseason with the Panthers for 5 years. Um, I've had offers to do a pro team, just one sport, and that's all I would do. I never want to have to give up any of the three. I love my job because I get to dabble in all three every year. This is the first time I haven't called a baseball game since I was in college. I mean,
Oh,
I'm going to go an
wow.
entire baseball season, Shane, for the first time, going back to minor league games, going back to Atlanta Braves games, and SEC baseball for so many years. I've never gone a season without calling a game since the mid 90s. So I feel out of sorts, and I've never missed it more. And I can't imagine going a football season without calling some football games.
Oh,
So I never want to give up any of the three again. I hope we never go through anything like this again for so many reasons, but that's one of them.
no doubt. Mike Morgan is our guest on this Monday. You can follow him on Twitter at at Morgan on air. Mike, let's talk about what's going on now. Obviously, as you mentioned, no more basketball, no baseball. I think with the athletes in the SEC going back to campus June 8th here in about a week, I think we got a chance to play. I think we're going to play. Do you think we start on time this year?
I do, and as you mentioned, I do a podcast, JC and Morgan, and we almost exclusively talk college football each and every week. In fact, we had Chris Doring on yesterday, but we have been talking for the last couple of months. And look, I was there March 12th. I was ready to call the SEC second round of the SEC basketball tournament. In fact, the second game on the docket that day was Florida versus Georgia. And I remember when 45 minutes before the first game, the plug was pulled, and the reality had set upon us that, okay, everything is going to be different for a while. We just canceled a conference basketball tournament. They then canceled the NCAA tournament. Then they canceled the entire college baseball season. I'm just thinking, what world are we living in? So it was very hard to stay positive at that time. We were still dealing with the unknown, obviously, with the virus. But I have watched countless hours of news coverage, and you have to be real careful what you watch and who you trust. And I've read a bunch of things, and I've followed it. And what disturbed me going back to even late April, early May, the amount of people that cover this sport that were so quickly to wave the white flag and say, oh, I just don't see how we're going to do it. And my point, and you can go back and listen 7 weeks ago, was there's nothing wrong with being positive here. There's no reason to already capitulate the season, to bury your head in the sand like an ostrich and just say, Uncle, it's not going to happen. There are too many things at play that I thought if we kept making progress, flattening the curve, if people kept social distancing, if the numbers kept going down, the weather gets warmer, time was somewhat on our side because football was still months away, that I wasn't willing to join that pack of people that said, oh, yeah, we can't play a season. Or if we do, we're going to start in the spring. I never bought into any of that. And I've got a few contacts that are athletic directors in this league and others, and they both were telling me for weeks, Mike, it ain't over. We can do this. It's not going to be sellout crowds. There's going to be a lot of things that'll be different. But they thought there was a good chance a season would take place. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, I think there will be a season. I think it will start on time. I think the only games that won't be played will be if a particular school elects not to participate. And obviously that game would either be rescheduled or would just be canceled altogether, much like if we had a game that was scheduled and then a hurricane happened. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you could make it up, sometimes you can't. So, if you look down that Florida schedule, until one of those schools backs out, I would expect all 12 games to be played.
Well, that's great news. I feel the same way. My son has had his COVID test, supposed to be reporting on campus June 8th. I've been on a lot of podcasts as you have. I've had a bunch of guests as well. Some talk about when you look at, let's just play conference games. And I understand their point there, but me being a college football fan and understanding what it is as an athlete, the Troys of the world, like South Alabama, I believe, is supposed to come to the Swamp this year. Mm-hmm. They need to play that game. They need that game check. And plus, it's a great experience for those kids at South Alabama to be able to play in the Swamp. Mm-hmm. Right now, do you feel like those games will continue to be played?
I do. And you mentioned part of it. Look, part of it is, I never want to undersell this, and I think sometimes it is understated in the whole calculus of this season. Players want to play, coaches want to coach, teams want to participate. So this whole notion that, the kids will be too scared to go and they're very reluctant. That's not what I'm hearing from coaches. That's not what I'm hearing from people. So, you take UAB, for example. Was that the school you mentioned? I'm sorry.
South Alabama.
South Alabama.
Yeah. Same type of school.
Wrong directional school, but same caliber. So you take the Jaguars over there in Mobile, Alabama. To a man, I'll bet you those kids are ready to play. They're ready to get in the weight room. They're ready to participate. And if the numbers are what they are in so many of these other cities and on college campuses, then they're going to play. And they want to play. The other part of that is you have to throw this into the equation. As you mentioned, quite honestly, they need the money. Mm-hmm. And I think what we've learned is throughout all of this, it's been I always try to draw a positive out of anything. It has enlightened a lot of people on a lot of different things. And one of the things that has enlightened people on is the fact that this whole notion that college athletics is this bottomless pit of money, that they're just sitting on Fort Knox and at any time they can just hit the combination and let's grab another 50 million. That ain't reality, folks. If this season got canceled, you're talking about $4 billion that would be lost in athletic revenues. Now, some of those schools, like maybe a Florida or Georgia, could withstand that for maybe one season and just fire some people, maybe eliminate some Olympic sports. You already see some coaches taking pay cuts and just tread water until the next season. Many others, the South Alabamas of the world, might have to just fold up shop. And so from those programs' standpoint, not only do they want to, they almost have to stay afloat. And if they don't, you just don't know if there is going to be a season for them in 2021, 2022. So, again, I think everybody is going to take their best foot forward. This is why we pay conference commissioners, presidents, athletic directors. It's to be problem solvers, not people that just raise their hands up in the air and say, well, this is too complicated, we can't do it. It's to actually make compromises, solve problems, adjust to things we've never seen before, and obviously this qualifies. And because of all that, I think the overwhelming majority of the 130 FBS programs will participate. There probably will be a few that simply cannot, but I think overall most of them will.
I agree with you. Two last things with you, Mike. Your thoughts, being a former Gator yourself, your thoughts on what Dan Mullen has done in his 2 years here.
I don't think the reviews could be anything other than very good. And I go back to that coaching search, and we talked about it on the podcast. Isn't it amazing that, I mean, for all intents and purposes, for a lot of people, he was the third choice, right? Mm-hmm. You look at what Tennessee, what happened there. We know that Jeremy Pruitt wasn't their first choice. And right now he seems to have the program going in the right direction. Sometimes things just work out in a funny way, don't they? Look, I covered Dan Mullen on more than one occasion when he's at Mississippi State. He gets the most out of what he has. He's always been a great offensive mind. And the fact that he has some history in Gainesville during a great time under Urban Meyer, it just seems like a natural, right? It just seems like a fit. McElwain never felt like a fit. No. Will Muschamp, I don't know if he was ready at that time. I think he still might have success at South Carolina, but it was a big leap for him, and at times that inexperience showed. This was a slam dunk hire, and it's encouraging to me to see Florida starting to win some of those games that they had been losing. I think the talent is only going to get greater. And I know some people say, well, Dan Mullen's never had a reputation as a great recruiter. Well, sometimes Florida recruits itself, right? Mm-hmm. And if Florida's winning 10 games a year, I promise you they're going to have good recruiting classes. So I think everything is going in the right direction. Eventually, and Trask was a great story. Will probably be a great story again this year. But eventually, I mean, he's going to land one of those blue chip guys, and they're going to have a whole lot of fun playing in his offense. The Swamp is starting to look like the Swamp again. I mean, it was depressing to see so many empty seats at so many home games during that stretch of time. So I just think Florida's starting to look like Florida again. After a respite from the elite, Florida seems like it's back on its way.
Yeah. Last thing for you. You've been around the head ball coach many, many times. You got any good stories you could tell us on air?
Well, I covered him not only in Gainesville, I covered him at South Carolina during my time there. I just, the thing I remember so much about him, I mean, obviously, in addition to him being revolutionary in terms of a coach, his first few years in the SEC, he was revolutionary in smack talk. I mean, he just had a way of subtly taking that knife and digging it into an opposing coach or fan base. To the point where so many opposing fans called him the evil genius. They respected him, but boy, they didn't like him. I remember hosting a call-in show when he was his first year as a head coach at South Carolina, and it was not part of my regular duties there, but I filled in to do the show, and I introduced myself, and we talked about, some of the time, his time in Gainesville and whatnot, and I just remember not what was said on the 45 minutes on the air. I remember the 15 minutes of commercial breaks, and I was pick his brain. And I told you I was a football nerd. I would start talking to him about the Tampa Bay Bandit teams he coached and how good a player Gary Anderson was and things of that nature. And he was just blown away that somebody could actually talk with him about that kind of stuff, because he's robotic. I mean, he's Rain Man in his knowledge and the retention of football. And I've never seen anything like it. So just to be able to do that, those weren't funny stories per se. It was like okay, if I could bid for this at an auction, right, how much money would I spend to be able to sit down with Steve Spurrier and just rap about any football topic I want, not one specific team or doing a preview for a game, blah, blah, blah. That gets kind of boring. But we were just talking football and NFL, USFL, his days at Duke winning an ACC title. That was one of my favorite hours on radio ever. There's so many funny things he said and done, but I just remember that. I take that away as one of my favorite experiences.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, Mike, let everybody know, obviously they know where to find you on the SEC network, but how they can check out your podcast.
Sure. It's on all the kind of like your forums, iTunes and Google Play and Spotify and all those beautiful things. It's just called JC and Morgan. JC Sherbert's my co-host. He's a former recruiting guru who's has his own website called The Big Spur that covers a lot of stuff. And we do it each and every week, and you can catch it. We try to help kill an hour and a half of your week, whether you're on the treadmill or stuck in traffic or whatever. And so far, it's been pretty well received.
That's awesome. Well, Mike, appreciate you taking the time to join our program today. Be safe out there, and we're anxious to see you back calling some ball games.
Me too, Shane. Me too, Shane. Anxious to see you when I'm back in Gainesville for a game. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That's Mike Morgan from the SEC Network. We're going to take our first time out of the program here. You're watching and listening to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Kenyan Weeks, former Gator basketball star.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. The Best Restoration, Masters of Disasters. Pound Hurt, your preferred personal injury attorneys. Peachland Dental, Gator fans' first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, The Keys Grill and Piano Bar, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Cloud9 Spa, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, Gator Bait Media, Damas Gainesville Chevrolet, Miapa Latin Cafe, Gators Dockside, Aikido America Martial Arts and After School, Doreen Weeby Realtor, Caldwell Banker, Redware, Rap Spot. If you are interested in promoting your business on this show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the Advertise button or call Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support this show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown!
Welcome back to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Celebration Point is where the Gators come to celebrate, with premium brands like Bass Pro Shop, Tommy Hilfiger, Hotel Indigo, Nike, Medici's, Regal Cinemas, and coming soon, HBC's new restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Visor's Rooftop Bar. We will see you at Celebration Point, where the Gators come to celebrate. I want to thank Mike Morgan from the SEC Network joining us. Now we're going to go back to the Titan MR hotline, and we're joined by former Gator great shooting guard, Kenyan Weeks. Good morning,
Thanks,
Kenyan.
Shane.
How are you?
Hey, good morning, Shane. Thanks for having me on the show, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to Mike Morgan earlier, and he was in school kind of when you were there, and he's a SEC basketball commentator now, and we were bringing up, why in the world did you wear number 52?
Oh, that's a great story. Actually, my freshman year at Florida, I wore number 22, and I think it was a game against Georgia in the O-Dome. And I saw a fan had a poster at the game, and it said, "The Georgia Bulldogs suck 52 weeks of the year." And so that just stuck in my head. And, you know, the next year came around, I was like, you know what? I'm going to change my number to 52 because I just thought it went well, it rang well. So I liked it, you know, and now I kind of use that in my hometown. I do some training, and I do training 52 weeks a year. So,
That's awesome.
you know, that's what kind of,
That's a great
I
story.
got into 52.
Yeah, I'll have to let Mike know that because we were both going, you know, that's a weird number for a shooting guard.
Yeah,
That's a cool story. Well, let's go back to your high school days. You grew up in North Carolina, I believe, but you went to Fort Union Military Academy, which always a lot of good players come out of there. Just talk about your experience. Who all recruited you, you know, coming out of high school, and what made you choose the University of Florida?
Okay. My experience at Fort Union, you know, I was introduced to Fort Union by a good friend of my high school coach. His name was Dan Peterson, and he sent a lot of kids to Fort Union over the years. I think he even helped Adrian Moss go there, who also went to the University of Florida and won the championship. Anyway, I went there out of high school to mature physically and also academically, you know, just to you know, get better time management with my academics. I was a skinny kid coming out of high school at 165, and I didn't think I was ready to go to college and compete at a Division I level, especially in the SEC with that type of body frame. So I used that year at Fort Union just to, you know, work out, lift weights, get stronger, mature a little bit more before stepping on the college campuses. Out of high school, you know, I had Tennessee, NC State, University of North Carolina. I think I had 17 Division I offers. And Florida, Lon Kruger actually recruited me to Florida. And he was recruiting a kid on my high school team who ended up choosing NC State. But while they were there recruiting him, they saw me. And they kind of recruited me from then on. And even through my year at Fort Union, they recruited me still. And, you know, they brought me down for a visit in the fall. I went to a football game, loved the environment, you know, loved the weather. It was just a win-win. And that was my second visit to Florida. You know, the first time I went, it was, I think Lon Kruger was the coach of the USA team. Had a bunch of guys on campus, Allen Iverson, Ray Allen, Tim Duncan. So I got to hang out with those guys. I think Dimitri Hill was a part of that team as well. And I just got to hang out with those guys. It was a great experience. And I just liked Florida. Like, the campus was great. The facilities were great. You know, the coaching staff, you know, everybody saying it was family oriented. So it was something I wanted to be a part of, even though it wasn't that basketball school. You know, it was a football school.
Right. But so Lon recruits you, and then he leaves. Billy comes in. Talk a little bit about what it was like to play for Billy Donovan. Actually, you know, he's a young rising coach. Nobody really knew much about Billy Donovan when he first got here. Just talk about his style of coaching.
I loved his style of coaching. Billy Donovan also recruited me in high school at Marshall, but I just didn't see myself going to Marshall.
Right.
I thought I was a better player at a higher level than what Marshall played at, but I loved his style of play. And so when Lon Kruger decided to leave, the first call I got was from Jeremy Foley. He said, I understand you came here because of mostly Lon Kruger. You know, just give us a chance to hire a new basketball coach before you make a decision if you want to leave or stay. So it ended up being Billy Donovan. It didn't take long. I think it was 3 or 4 days. But ended up being Billy Donovan. And I said, heck, he's already did a home visit with me. He's met my mom. I met the whole staff. I'm just going to stay at the University of Florida. And it was the best thing that I think happened to me.
Yeah, no doubt.
We weren't very good the first years. I didn't know if I really wanted to be there because I didn't know if that was what I signed up for, because Billy Donovan was very intense in his younger days. And I get it that he was trying to, you know, start a culture, set the standard there at University of Florida to get it to where it is now. And I think he did a great job of that. And it was just very intense. But some days I questioned myself, did I really, you know, do I really want to do this here? I thought I was on a track team. We ran so much, did so much stadiums. I mean, he was intense. You know, the workouts were hard. I just wasn't used to it at the time. But as time went by, you know, I bought in. You know, I heard Donnie Jones on the show earlier talking about buying in. You know, we weren't very talented, but as the years, you know, as he was there longer, and my freshman, my sophomore to my junior year, we got more talent. Everybody was on the same page, and, you know, we ended up winning a lot of games.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, you know, going into your senior year, make a run in the NCAA tournament, get to a Final Four. That would have been Florida's second trip to the Final Four.
Yeah.
I want to say in '96 was the first time, or '94.
94, I think it was.
'94.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your senior year and what it meant to because that's your goal. I mean, that's everybody's goal as a college basketball player. Let's get to the Final Four and to be able to do it your senior year.
If you would have told me when that season began that we were going to play for a national championship at the end, I would have thought you were crazy. Even though we were talented, I think, well, when it was all said and done, I think 10 guys off that team ended up playing professionally, whether it was in the NBA or in Europe. Everybody, played at the next level. And that tells you the kind of talent that we had on that team. And we just worked every day, We were 10 deep. When we subbed, there was no let off. The practices were intense. We were all buying in about winning, just sharing the ball. And, that's what Billy was great at that. He was great at teaching. He was great at motivating. And I wish his coaching staff was as well, too. Anthony Grant was intense as far as defense. Coach John Pelfrey was very intense, teaching the offense, running plays. And Donnie Jones was the guy you went to when all the coaches yelled at you. He was going to be the one to, okay, get your mind back right. Just do what the coach asks and let's get it going. So, I had a great mix as a coaching staff of different personalities and what they brought to the table. And I think that helped a lot of the guys. We had a lot of young guys, I think 10 freshmen and sophomores maybe on that team. I was the only senior, So, the job they did was great that year, man. It was a lot of fun. And, it was something that nobody can take away from me, man. I cherish those moments my senior year.
Absolutely. Talk about some of your teammates on that team that went to play for the national title. Do you stay in contact with them?
The one that I'm most in contact with mostly is Udonis Haslam.
Yeah. Is he still playing? He's still playing, right?
He's still playing. I'm not sure what's going to happen, next year, but, this year he was still playing. When he comes to town, he always leaves me tickets for the game. And that's the one that played in the league that I stay in contact with the most probably. But a lot of guys I talk to normally, Major Parker, Brent Wright, Eddie Shannon. Let's see, Major Parker. I talked to those guys, and I was just in Gainesville for the ceremony for Billy when they named the court after him. So I saw a lot of guys I hadn't saw in a lot of years. So that was great.
Talk about that night, how special it was, because here's the thing, Kenyan, you were part of building the basketball program with Billy Donovan because you were his first class to graduate.
Yeah.
Kind of how when Coach Spurrier was here, I was his first quarterback. So we feel those first couple of years in 90, 91, and 92, we feel like we laid the foundation for the rest of the program for all those years.
Yeah.
Having his name on that court probably meant a lot to you because you were one of his first players.
I was the first player to actually play and graduate for Billy Donovan in 4 years. I was the very first one. It was another guy that came in with me, Obi Naji, but he ended up transferring out, I think, after his sophomore year. And, that night was a very special night. It was well-deserved for Billy Donovan. All the players that showed up, and even for the ones that couldn't make it, he touched their lives, not just in basketball, but off the court as well. And, it's well-deserved, man. He changed the program around, even though Florida had some success in the past. But, coming in, going to, the national championship game, winning back-to-back championships, numerous SEC championships. The guy did made great strides for the program and got it to where it is now. And I think Mike White is doing a good job of trying to hold it there.
We're speaking with Kenyan Weeks, former Gator great basketball player, one of the best shooters to ever play here at the University of Florida. So let me ask you this question. I usually ask all the former athletes, what's the greatest moment you had as a Gator? Whether it's a game or an experience. Obviously playing for the national title is probably one of them, but is there a game that stands out in your mind?
To me, a game that stood out to me was a game, I think it was my sophomore year against Auburn in the SEC tournament. I think I scored 31 points that game. It was just a game for me where, back then it was a time where I thought about, hey, I want to transfer. I don't know if I want to be here. It was my second year. We still weren't winning at the time. So after that season, I think Billy came to me and had Coach Grant, had a meeting with him as well, where they kind of knew that I maybe wanted to transfer. And they, came and spoke with me and, hey, stick here at the University of Florida. I promise you we're going to win games. the talent that we got coming next year is going to get better. And like they said, it happened. You know, I think we went to a Sweet 16 my junior year, lost in the tip in to Gonzaga at the buzzer, which a game we could have went to Elite Eight. I think it was in Tampa that year. And then my next year, you know, obviously playing in a national championship game, that's like the best moment. That's what you go to college to do, to compete for a national championship. And, you know, we achieved that. And, you know, I'm grateful that I made it that far. I wish we could have, you know, brought home the trophy that year, but, you know, it's unfortunate that we didn't. But, you know, it was just a great experience that year. My whole senior year.
Your teams laid the foundation for those championships afterwards. Talk a little bit about, I don't know how often you get back to campus. Obviously, you were back for Billy's ceremony, but how nice the O-Dome is now and how nice that dang practice facility they got.
I mean, the whole campus is just changed dramatically since I've been there. I got to campus, I was like, where do I go? I tried to go to the Rights Union. It was just, what is this place? You know, so, and then the O-Dome, what they've done with it, you know, now the doors don't slam hard when you try to open it with the wind coming in from before. So, you know, that was a nice adjustment. But just the way they built that place up inside and, you know, and the practice facility down the street behind Hall 95, man, it's just awesome. You know, I wish I could have practiced in there for 4 years, you know.
I don't blame you. I mean, it's got to be kind of cool because they have all the center courts of all the Final Fours. That one from 2000 up there. That's got to be special to you.
That's awesome. That's got to be a great recruiting tool. I mean, when a kid comes there, how can you not want to come here with all this, you know, tradition on the walls and, you know, the nice facilities? It'd be hard to pass up.
So can you talk about what was your favorite game you played or opponent that you played? Was it the Kentucky Wildcats going to Rupp Arena? Was that your favorite game each year?
That wasn't one of my favorite places to play because, you know, it was an ice rink under their floor. They used it to play hockey in there. So if you didn't go in there and get a good warm up at Kentucky, you were going to get blown out because you weren't going to be loose. So, you know, our main thing was going there, getting a good lather during the warm up and just playing. And their crowd was an older crowd. And so they wasn't really on you like I say at Tennessee. Tennessee was one of the best places to go play in because the kids were really involved in the game. You can hear them from the court. I mean, it was very intense. And we had some good battles with Tennessee throughout the years. I think that's one of my favorite opponents while I played at the University of Florida, playing against Tennessee and those guys.
Okay. So you graduate from the University of Florida. You go play overseas for several years. Talk a bit about that experience. Did you enjoy playing overseas?
I love playing overseas. It was like college without class. You know, we didn't play an NBA schedule where we're playing 3-4 nights a week. We played twice a week. You know, once in your league and then once out of the country if you played in the European League where it was several teams from other different countries that, you know, made up a league. But, I mean, the experience there was great. You know, there was no language barrier like most people think. You know, most of the people speak English. I mean, it was just a great environment, going to play against men, you know, the lifestyle, living on your own. I mean, it was just great. I think I've been to 28 different countries over the years that I played and just, you know, I never would have been able to do that if it wasn't for basketball. So, you know, playing in Europe was great. I kept in contact with teammates. I actually played with Justin Hamilton 1 year in Europe. He was my teammate. And, you know, we visited each other, Brent Wright, Eddie Shannon and I. We would make time to, you know, link up if we had a break and go visit each other throughout Europe and, you know, see where each other were living. So it was good. Cool. It was good.
Well, another cool thing you've gotten to experience, you're a member of the Harlem Globetrotters. Tell us first of all, how do you become a member of Globetrotters? And then how fun was that to go on, you know, put on a show for all these kids?
It was at the Final Four. It was a guy at our hotel. His name was Chad Groth. I remember his name. His name is Chad Groth, and he was like a recruiter for the Globetrotters.
Now, this is the Final Four, the one you played in?
This is the Final Four and the played in. You know, he was at our hotel. My parents were in town, and my mom actually talked to this guy because he couldn't come up and talk to me, but he talked to my mom. It's like, if nothing works out for Kenyan, we'd love to bring him to our training camp. It was out in Phoenix, Arizona at the time. And that's where their headquarters are, is in Phoenix. And we'll bring him out there for a week, and he'll play with our guys that we have now. You know, they play competitive basketball as well. And I went out there, did pretty good. You know, they invited me back to the main camp, and I instantly made a team and, you know, signed a contract, and I played for a year. And initially, I was just playing a competitive part because I couldn't do all the tricks. You know, so they gave me a basic routine where I would take the ball around my waist, through my legs a couple of times, roll it on my arms. You know, something basic to do if somebody happened to miss or was sick and they couldn't do that roll, so they would fill us in. But it was great. I mean, we were traveling like we were in the NBA. We were doing 2 shows a day on the weekends. You know, it was a hard job. It was very hard, but fun and exciting because everywhere we go, we were recognized. Oh, the Harlem Globetrotters, let's take pictures. I don't think my jaws ever hurt that much from smiling and taking pictures because that was one of the, you know, that's one thing you had to do, man. You got to learn how to smile. And, you know, it was great. That was a great organization. It's good for guys who don't have an opportunity to play professionally or competitive all the time to join that organization and just, you know, just learn and just travel around. It was great.
Did you ever learn any of the crazy tricks?
I didn't. The most thing they had me doing was, you know, once, because I was a good shooter, you know, they had me shoot the shot from half court. You got like 3 tries during the actual show, and every shot that you made, you know, well, if you made one, you get $1,000 after the game. The owner would give it to you cash.
Oh, wow.
So that was a bonus. So every time, it's your turn to shoot. You make the shot, you get $1,000. You miss, okay, we go on to another part of the show. But, you know, that was some of the fun stuff and some of the perks that we had, you know, playing with them. It was great, man. It was great.
You know what I want to ask you? It just came to my mind. That one tournament that they play, and I want to say maybe in the summertime, where all the former players from certain colleges, it's that tournament, you know what I'm talking about? Like
they compete and they win like a $2 million prize or something like that. Yeah.
I see all these colleges have teams, but we don't have one.
Yeah.
I think you need to look into that.
You know, Eddie Shannon and I actually talked about this. Like, we should get a team. Like, we're not going to play. We're older, but with the guys that we got that's played after us, that's still playing, I think we could be competitive in that league and probably win some.
Yeah, I can't remember what the name of that team is, but like I know the Syracuse team is called like the Boeheim's Army or something like that. Yeah. I've always wondered why we didn't have a team representing the University of Florida.
We've talked about that. That's come up in a lot of conversations that I've had with some of my teammates in the past, and I don't know why. We need to do something like that because we definitely got some talented guys that can go out and possibly win that game or win the whole tournament.
We're speaking with Kenyan Weeks here on the Titan MR hotline from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Got a few more minutes with him. So let the Gator Nation know what you're up to these days.
What I'm up to these days is I'm just training kids in my hometown. I have a training business. It's called No More Bricks because I was a shooter, you know, and I go to all these kids. I go to my kids' games and I see guys or kids shooting the basketball the wrong way. Even though they may make it, they're just practicing bad habits and just, you know, so I created this business. It's called No More Bricks, where I teach kids on just the right form of how to shoot. You know, we go out, we practice form shooting. We don't do a lot of drills. We just practice on technique, you know, developing that muscle memory so you can able to shoot the ball right. And once you get to a point where you're strong enough, you know, then we go out and try to put some reps to it.
How often do you stay in touch with Coach Donovan a lot?
I do. I was their last OKC came to town here, I think in February or January this year, and Coach Donovan actually gave me, my dad, and my son some tickets to the game, and we sat behind the bench. I sat right beside his dad, who I had a great time talking to the whole game. But and I saw him at the Final Four last year out in Minnesota. We got together at a game, and I stay in contact with Coach Donovan. He's just a call away. You know, if you need anything, I mean, he's there to make that call for you if you need it.
Talk about, you know, Anthony Grant was on that staff that you played for. With the success he had at Dayton this year, did you get to watch them play at all?
I did watch them play it all, and you know, I saw his wife in Gainesville because she showed up for the ceremony for Billy, and I just told her, "Hey, man, can you tell Coach Grant now he's doing a heck of a job out there? You know, he's got a guy that's going to be probably a top 5 pick. You know, I know they won a lot of games this year. He was like the coach of the year. I mean, it's well deserved for a guy like him. He worked hard. You know, he was a defensive guy. I think he learned a lot from being with Billy Donovan as far as offense. And, I mean, he's a great guy, great coach, very intense. Wants his guys to play the right way. He teaches them to play the right way. And I think he's a great father as well, too. Just a great person, Anthony Grant was. Just a great person.
When you watch college basketball now, has it changed a lot since you played?
I think the style of play has changed, but the players is still the same. Guys are athletic. Guys can shoot. Guys can handle it. And I just think the guys are more skilled today. You know, if you're a big man when I played, you were a big man.
Right.
Now they got big men that's shooting threes, handling the ball. You know, it's great. We had guys like that. Brent Wright was a guy who was 6'9" that could handle the ball a little bit. You know, Mike Miller, obviously, you know, played in the NBA for a lot of years. He was 6'8", but, you know, it's typical. But, I mean, the game has changed that in that aspect to me. Guys are more skilled. That's what I think. Guys
Do you think it was good that they moved the college 3-point line back?
Yeah, it was too close. It was too close. It was too close. I mean, and guys, you know, if you're a guy that goes to the gym and shoot every day and work on your game, you know, shooting that 3 ball, that's nothing. You know, I think it steps back, you know, it make it more competitive this year.
You're living in North Carolina, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I want to ask you this because when basketball people talk about the blue blood, so to speak, in college basketball, you think Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, I mean, Kentucky, used to could say Indiana, but they've been irrelevant. Where would you put Florida's program among the top 20 programs in the country?
I would say at 10, just because we don't have that long withstanding tradition, you know, from the inception of Florida. You know, schools like when Coach K took over at Duke, I don't think they were very good in the beginning, but you know, as he's built that program, it's become a powerhouse, and guys want to go there and play every year. So I would say 10, just the fact that we won 2 back-to-back national championships in a short span of time. And we had some success before in the tournament of players. I would say 10. It's a top basketball program. It's a top basketball. I can't say too many schools out there got back-to-back championships.
No, you're right about that. When you watch the program since Mike White has taken over, obviously been a tremendous amount of pressure on him following a guy like Billy Donovan.
Of course.
Your thoughts on him? Have you met him? And he's brought in some big-time recruits here the last couple of years.
Mike White actually played at Ole Miss when I played at Florida. So we've had some battles on the court then. And I have met him a couple times in Gainesville. I met him when I went back for the ceremony for Billy and talked to him then. But he's done a great job of recruiting the talent in Florida and keeping that talent in the state of Florida, especially with Trey Mann. You know, I thought that was a really good freshman. Omari Payne, who I'm in love with, I think he's a pro. Scotty Lewis, I know he's not from the state of Florida, but, you know, that kid can really, really, really play. And I'm just excited. I think they had a guy sitting out last year who was the one of the leading scorers in the conference that he transferred in from. So I'm excited about him for next year. One of the guys I can't remember his name, but I saw him play.
Yeah, speaking of Trey Mann, he's put his name into the draft. You think he's going to come back to Florida? I don't think he'll be drafted, do you?
Yeah, I don't know. The kind of year he has, kind of up and down. I guess kind of a learning curve for him this year. I think if he came back next year, it'd be probably a better chance for him to get drafted. You know, I think a year being in the system, learning the game at this level, I think it did him a lot of justice this year. So I think coming back to school for him next year would be beneficial. Now, if he, you know, has somebody else telling him something else, that's a different story. But, you know, he's really talented. I guess he has NBA talent, but I don't know if he's ready to make that step yet.
All right. Last thing for you, Kenyan. You got a funny story about Billy Donovan that you could tell us?
I don't know if it's funny. Yeah, it's a funny story. It's kind of embarrassing for him because, like I said, his first couple of years, he was very intense, and he would do anything to try to motivate us to get us to play harder. I can remember one day in practice, I think it was maybe my freshman or my sophomore year, I can't remember. He was so mad that he wanted to kick us out the gym after practice and bring us back that night at midnight. Okay, so what he did was went over to a ball and tried to kick it, but he stepped on it and fell. So, you know, at the time, you know, we was like, but when we got in the locker room, man, it was the most hilarious story ever. And, you know, I think he was embarrassed about it, but it was all fun. I think even some of the coaches laughed about it afterwards. But at the time he did it, it was just, you know, I could hear a pin drop in the court. At the time, everybody got quiet. But that's the one that I could think of off the top of my head. The thing with Coach Donovan for me was he had a lot of funny sayings. Mm-hmm. You know, if a guy wasn't competing, you know, we had a trainer, Chris Koenig. I don't know if you know Chris Koenig. Yeah. And he would tell Chris all the time, hey, take this player downstairs and put some ice on his heart. You know, because the guy's not competing. You know, he would have the most funniest sayings. about anything. I think it's a guy, Greg Christelle, who I played with, who I don't think he finished out his career, but he had a long list of Billy Donovan sayings that he had brought to the ceremony. And before we went down to the court or whatever, up in the little lobby area over in the O Dome, he was just, going down the list, reading these things off. It was just hilarious to hear those, But yeah, that's about it for Billy, man.
Last thing,
Good guy.
did like Billy and Anthony Grant and Donnie Jones and Pelfrey ever scrimmage you guys?
Not against us. I just remember them playing in a tournament against the students. I think they had a tournament over at the Southwest Rec Center, and I think they won every year. I don't even think they lost. And that's when I saw the competitive side of all the coaches. I mean, they talked trash to the students like they were, playing again. And I thought that was fun to see, And so that inspired the players to come out and play hard. Like, our coaches still get up in the morning, they come and lift weights, they run on the treadmill. If they can expect that out of us and they go out there and do it, man, that's good to see.
Well, Kenyan, we appreciate you joining the program. I love your reason why you wear number 52.
Yeah.
Georgia sucks 52 weeks out of the year. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what I saw on the poster.
I love that. Well, hey, man, we're glad you're doing well. Hope you and your family stay safe. And we'll see you next time you're in Gainesville.
Definitely, Shane. Thank you for having me on today, man.
All right, that's Gator Great. Kenyan Weeks. We're going to take our second time out of the program. When we come back, we'll wrap it up. You've been watching and listening to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. The Best Restoration, Masters of Disasters. Pound Hurt, your preferred personal injury attorneys. Peachland Dental, Gator fans' first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, The Keys Grill and Piano Bar, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Cloud9 Spa, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, Gator Bait Media, Damas Gainesville Chevrolet, Miapa Latin Cafe, Gators Dockside, Aikido America Martial Arts and After School, Doreen Weeby Realtor, Caldwell Banker, Redware, Rap Spot. If you are interested in promoting your business on this show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the advertise button or call Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown.
Welcome back to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. A Monday edition. Really want to thank Mike Morgan from the SEC Network and Kenyan Weeks, great shooting guard for the Florida Gators, joining the program. At Center State Bank, we put business first. We are the largest community bank in the state of Florida. Center State has 5 convenient Alachua County locations to serve you better. Come in and experience the Center State difference. To learn more, visit centerstatebank.com. Center State Bank, member FDIC. Also, get to our This Day in Sports, brought to you by The Best Restoration. Do you have COVID-19 concerns? Do what everyone is doing and hire The Best Restoration to fully sanitize and sterilize your home or office. Visit their offices this week for a free bottle of hand sanitizer when you mention the code Shane. Call them 352-234-8994. This day, back in 1980, Larry Bird beats out Magic Johnson for NBA Rookie of the Year. So let's see. Tomorrow's show is going to be outstanding. Jack Youngblood, Hall of Famer, will be joining the program along with Buddy Martin. And also, folks, don't forget you can check us out on Facebook Live, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Please have your friends and yourself go follow our show. You can like it, but we want you to follow it. But that's going to pretty much be a Monday wrap on this show. We'll be back, same place, same time tomorrow. Stay safe out there, folks. Take care.